Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we're bringing you day 511 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Olexiy Arestovych, and Russian opposition politician, lawyer, and blogger Mark Feygin. Today's kudos go to Zeni Gaming, Ludmila Skoryantova, and Topia SR. Thank you guys for supporting us. And Bill S., thank you for your super chat. Thanks. That's really appreciated as well. And with this, let's dive into day 511. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It is Wednesday, July 19th, 2 minutes past 10 in Kiev, 2 minutes past 10 p.m. in Moscow, day 511 with Olexiy Arestovych. Olexiy, glad to see you. Alright, we have 50,000 starting with us. Over 15,000 of you click the like button. That's not enough. Please find a second to click that like button. And do not forget to share that link. That helps also to get new eyeballs to our streams. And if you have not subscribed yet, do so to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that stream in English. Alright, let's start discussing. Let's probably start with the first several most important news. And the situation is still developing. The grain deal. Moscow is basically squirting in regards to that deal. Putin came out with several statements. For example, he said that we can return to the grain deal. Russia was showing miracles of patience and tolerance, continuing and extending that grain deal, but nobody was going to fulfill their obligations on that side, and they were only demanding things from Russia. And he also called Arestovych very bold that he keeps pouring shit on him. Sorry, no, Olexiy, he didn't do that, I'm just kidding. He said that the world is not fulfilling their obligations on the grain deal. He also said that Russia is always getting problems whenever they try to supply grain to the developing countries. And he also announced that the vessels that are currently being loaded in Ukrainian ports with grain, and there are different countries. These ships belong to different countries, so some of them are named that they will be allowed to leave. Others will not have any security and safety guarantees in the Black Sea Basin and may be attacked from the side of Russian Federation. And that's it. That's starting 20th of July, they start to torpedo or attack these vessels or whatever they want to do with them. And Russia is basically stating, with a statement from Minister of Defense, that every vessel, regardless of the flag, will be considered to be a representative of the foe of Ukraine, and they will reserve a right to attack it. So Russia essentially is stating a naval blockade of Ukraine, and they're violating international laws because neutral vessels should not be endangered. And there is some selection of some countries are facing that risk, others are not. But in 2 or 3 hours, that situation goes into a new escalation. We'll see how our dear allies will react. The ones who say that their fight for the rights and the freedom of shipping. And I'm ready to call my prognosis of that, how they will react. Okay, how? No how. They won't react in any way. Oh, that's interesting. By the way, you're right. United States also said that they won't go to, not going to convoy their vessels. Not exactly, Mark. They said they're not ready to go for providing convoy to their vessels, so it's a little different. But I'm thinking that nobody will react immediately, and more than that, I think Erdogan will not react immediately to that situation as well. Oh, why? Why do you think so? Because they might not need that. That's an open question, I think. Or do you think it is predictable that everything will stop and no vessels will go with any grain? And of course they won't if there will not be any cover, because Turkish fleet is about the only fleet that can provide any guarantees. Everything else is at your own risk. And then Russia, of course, can throw naval mines and launch a few torpedoes, so if nobody is providing any cover for them. Do you think Erdogan will find himself losing points if he agrees with that? I will say one thing. There is one little hope, very little hope, that Erdogan will play that game behind the scenes and will push for weakening of that blockade for the international cargo-carrying vessels. Okay, so let's put a question up for today's chat. We're thinking that maybe you'll respond in no way, in that way that you said, that nobody will give a damn. So here's the question. Here it is in the chat. Will military vessels of Turkey provide cover and convoy for international vessels carrying grain in the Black Sea? No, 69% already. Yes, 31%. 3,000 of you already immediately voted. Please click, express your opinion. And of course, that's not scientific. This is just taking a temperature of our audience. And we already have hundreds and 16,000 with us. So, if to prognosticate that an alternative to do nothing will be some attempt to respond, not with military convoys, but with alternative measure. For example, okay, you do not let civilian vessels around into the Black Sea to carry any cargo, then we're closing Bosphorus and Dardanelles, and we will not let any Russian vessels. You can stay inside the Black Sea and you're not coming out. And that is possible, Mark, right? But that is even a remote thing, and even this will probably be exchanged for something. So what is Putin's regime doing? They're raising stakes. They're raising stakes for the right to trade. And probably the smartest way from Turkey would be not to provide convoy for the vessels as they initially mentioned, but just probably indeed shut off Bosphorus Straits. And they'll need to go deeper into the international conventions. What reasons do they have to seal that passway? And they're not Putin's thugs. They will look for official, legit reason. So we'll need to wait a bit. But I would say that I do not see Turkish Navy or United States jets guarding and protecting civilian trade routes. Oh, you're an optimist today. I'm an optimist since the beginning, Mark. I just know whom we're dealing with. This whole war from the Moscow side is still existing, only due to that lukewarm reaction of the Allies, who do not want to do much. You know, we can call this time as the biggest incongruency of the real tasks and people who are in charge of these situations and making decisions. And Putin is using that. Oh yeah, Putin is using that, Moscow is using that, even back in the Soviet times. Moscow was always using these situations. All right, we already have 26,000 who voted. People are enthusiastic today. So 20% think yes, there will be military convoy escort to the grain ships, and 68% think there'll be nothing. Okay. Let's go to the front. I think there are some interesting events there to discuss and some important activities. What do you consider to be important? Let's start with that. I think it's Kupiansk and that northeastern part of the front, where they're saying that they actually got a mile and a half of your territory. Well, one needs to understand how they and what they capture there. There's a lot of counter attacking, and they may take something, then we push them back and take it back. So one needs to understand the area they're fighting in. Indeed, they have about 100,000 Russian troops, but it's a very forested, hilly area with hills and ravines and nooks and crannies. It's difficult to fight there. And a lot of these actions are on a very small tactical level. So it is the same partisan fight in the hilly forested areas for certain hills, for certain platoon advantageous locations. And in some parts they indeed move because, well, they got 100,000, almost as much as Soviet Union had in Afghanistan. But even there, we kicked them back and took some of those positions. I don't think they've fully engaged there yet, but we'll see. Even if they manage to push the front line for a couple kilometers, we'll see. It won't change much on that front. And frankly, well, look, Olexiy, they are threatening Kupiansk, probably. Right, they might, but I'll dare them to. I don't think they are capable. It's been 2 days already, and I'm not impressed with any motion. All right, let's go down, take a look there, to the north of Bakhmut. Our brigades announced that they kicked butt of 72nd Russian Brigade and pushed by another mile to the north of Bakhmut and got 40 dead invaders, 0 losses on the Ukrainian side, very successful tactical maneuver. To the south, Klishevka and Kurdyumovka, there are also military actions there, and you can see Deep State is drawing a couple red arrows in the depth of the pink zone. That means that our troops are advancing. And that's despite all the efforts of Russian side that concentrated quite a bit of efforts here too, and they even have 2 tank divisions on that part of the front. And we're still moving, regardless, and nobody can effectively stop us there. Also, Avdiivka, difficult fights without any change of the shape of the front. Mariinka, same situation. To the south, even we acknowledge that we already are fighting in Staromayorskaya with them. They're trying to counterattack, but their media are saying that the Ukrainian side has some successes on the southern front, so nobody clarified that. I guess tomorrow we'll see how far did we go. And of course, Rabotina, Petykhatki, Lapkova, Zholobki, that southern front of Zaporozhye, but none of the military commands is talking about serious advances. And what I know also is we're still holding a bit near Olexiy on the left side of Dnieper, and they're still trying to capture it back and failing. All right, let's continue. Let's finish with the map. We've been live for about 14 minutes, and 142,000 are watching us. Let's continue our polling. whether military vessels of Turkey will continue escorting cargo vessels with grain. Yes, 40%, no, 60%. That's an interesting poll. And by the end of the stream, get your questions ready. We'll ask a few. We'll bring some of the better questions, and if you ask me, I'll try to answer as well. All right. As we expected, it was not even a secret. Putin is not even going to go to BRICS summit, and his spokesperson Peskov came out and said that he will be partaking online. And before that announcement, there was a flurry of activity from Ramaphosa from South African Republic, who appealed to Russia to send Lavrov instead, who talked to International Criminal Court, and that's what's happening. Russia is sending their Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lavrov. And I would personally say that South African Republic was in a difficult situation for having to follow the jurisdiction of International Criminal Court. They did not give any guarantees that they will not arrest or will arrest Putin, but the situation was concerning, so Putin decided not to risk his butt. Do you think, personally, if International Criminal Court got a message from South African Republic that they will not follow the orders of court, do you think there'd be some consequences? And if that ensued and Putin would have played it as, listen, that criminal court has no weight even with South Africa, so we don't care about it too. Mark, it's a little complex here. South African Republic would have been in a difficult position if they ignored criminal court orders. Yeah, they once ignored it. They actually, I think, ignored the order for Bashar Assad arrest, right? What happened to them? They had issues. They had consequences, right? So second time, if they do that, they would have probably more consequences. And they, I don't think, ready to face that situation. Also, they're ideologically apartheid fighters and all, and that's the whole reason why they joined International Criminal Court, to enable certain mechanisms, and now that would be playing against their own song. And another question would be interesting. What would that Russia said that we would declare war against South Africa if they try to arrest Putin? That'd be funny. How do you wage war against somebody who is so remote? Well, I don't know. Launch a missile, maybe. They do fly for what, 12,000 miles? That's at a limit for them. Well, no, Mark, there are ones that go much further, but you can also launch from a submarine. But the question would be, would they be shooting at the place where Putin is held captive? Is that what they would be doing? So I doubt that would have ever happened. But Russia is currently still raising the stakes of misbehaving on the international arena. They're creating a naval blockade of Ukraine and actually violating a bunch of international treaties. And it's probably just a difficult and dangerous time for Putin to leave his bunker and go anywhere after they have violated something else, like that blockade thing. So, he probably sees that if he takes his personal plane and goes somewhere, there may be 6 jets, F-16, F-35s, catching them in the air and asking, hey, let's proceed to that court area. Obviously, that might have happened during Reagan times. In the current times, I don't see leaders who will do that, but Putin is still considering that this is an eventuality, this may be one of the possibilities, and he would not be going anywhere. And I think in the long term, he's planning to alleviate some of the sanctions from Russia, probably to play that in exchange for alleviation of the grain deal restrictions. They already expressed their decisiveness about what they're doing in Russia, and they destroyed 60 tons of grain. And Zelensky came out and said that this grain belonged to China, by the way, that they hid in the grain terminals in Odessa. But that's what Russia is doing. They're destroying grain loading facilities, and trying to create a naval blockade. So we'll see what the mighty international community will come up with as an answer. I already told you, I think one of the rumors that I hear is that Russia is trying to also include a Crimean bridge into their agreement about grain, that Ukraine would not attack Crimean bridge. Oh yeah, by the way, that's another thing. They can come up and say, "Do not touch Crimean bridge and hold your Ukraine," and then we might consider letting the grain flow to Africa, because they don't have technical measures to provide security for that bridge, and they might try to cover that with a political maneuver. Well, Ukraine probably will not go for that because they are not dealing directly with Moscow. How can third countries provide that guarantee? Well, Russia may appeal to allies, pacify Ukraine, and prevent Ukraine from attacking certain targets like Crimean Bridge. They can appeal to United States. You think they can? Well, it's important for Putin to have a precedent. It'll be an important precedent for him to try to make United States to do something against Ukraine by Putin's wish. That'll be a strong win for him if he manages to do that. And that's what I said, that NATO, I was talking about that earlier, that NATO has very few measures to react to sub-level aggression. For example, right now we have a threat for all the peaceful cargo vessels in the Black Sea. That's what Russia came out and said. But what and who would say something? What would they do? NATO doesn't have exact mechanisms to deal with that. The United States already sent one of the speakers out to the Tribune to say, well, we're not part of that situation in the Black Sea. There's nothing we will be doing. So Russia is looking for those sub-level situations where they can bend the West over, where they can change the public opinion without engaging in a full-scale war, and activate certain layers of society in the West, the ones that are supportive of Putin and his regime, the ones who would be talking, well, we shouldn't be dealing with that, this is not our war, we should pacify both sides. And that would be the hybrid war. That would be the concept of the hybrid war that Russia is doing. They do act in a gray zone, things like shooting down American UAV, establishing naval blockade in Ukraine, and then changing public opinion in the West, or trying to. And that may result in a more active pushes from the West to try to make us sit at the negotiation table. Basically, they'll come and say, look, without trading, without the grain being sold from Ukraine, your situation will be even more dire, so let's go discuss. So these are the risks, and this is the game that Russia is playing. So do you think counteroffensive plays anything with that? That Kiev may have been expecting stronger results of it? Well, counteroffensive is still going, Mark. Right, but this is the perception. Mark, these are two things. Counteroffensive is one thing, and naval blockade is a different thing. So you think for success we need to try to look at these questions without connection between them? I think so. Counteroffensive essentially is a Ukrainian-Russian question, right? Naval blockade, where a Russian Minister of Defense is promising to look as legit military targets at every cargo vessel, regardless of its flag, in the Black Sea. That's not exactly a Russian-Ukrainian matter. That's international matter. All right. So look, here we had more public statements. There are some spokespeople coming from Russia trying to explain what Putin meant, saying that he was insisting on re-establishing the ammonia pipe between Taliati and Odessa, and also connecting the agriculture banks from Russian Federation to the world SWIFT system. And there are some other requirements that are not publicly voiced yet. And I think the security of the Crimean Bridge may be part of that, and the objects of naval infrastructure. So let's talk about what if they succeed in getting these terms. What would it mean? Well, it would mean that Putin managed to bend over the whole international community to his will. Bild is writing that there are several vessels going to Romania. One of these ships is under the Cameroon flag, going to the Ukrainian port. And Putin said that they will be attacking all the ships starting to 20th. Well, Mark, again, he did not say they will be attacking. He said they will be looking at them as legit military targets. It doesn't mean they will attack, but they might. Yeah, so basically they'll consider them to be a target on the same side as Ukraine. This is a total gauntlet being thrown to the international law at sea, and we'll see how the international community will react to that. My prognosis is they won't, because we don't have Reagan or Thatcher. The situation internationally is different. All right, we continue our polling. Will military Turkish vessels escort grain cargo vessels in the Black Sea? Yes, about 62%, no, about 28%. Almost 50,000 of you voted. All right, and regardless of that, United States just announced they're sending another support package to Ukraine worth of $1.3 billion. But I wanted to dig deeper into what's happening with jets. Rammstein, by the way, concluded yesterday. Can you elaborate more? Mark, I cannot elaborate more on the jets besides what the officials said. Reznikov came out and said that, yes, our pilots are already going for training, and in 2024, F-16s will be in Ukraine. I do believe him that in 24 we will. In 2024, absolutely. And how much time do we have left till 24? July, August, September, November, December, about half a year, right? So we'll need to sit tight for another 6 months. And by the way, 24 is also a long span, so it doesn't mean that they will show up on the 1st of January here, right? All right, let's continue on. I think you saw, and our viewers saw, we will not spend time on that, the video recording of Prigozhin's message and Utkin, whose call sign is Wagner, in Belarus, right? Yes, in Belarus, in front of some Wagner contractors, probably several hundred. I cannot calculate with any fidelity there on that video. It feels like it's being shot at night on purpose to not see much. Seems like Prigozhin indeed allowed that stream to be leaked. And what's curious there is that he's talking about continuation of Wagner, only now they'll be carrying their tasks in Belarus, and he's promising to make Belarus military second in the world. I don't know how he's going to fulfill that. And he's promising for Wagner to be still present in Africa. So Belarus is somewhat an additional territory for them. And of course, he's pouring crap on Ministry of Defense in Russia. And how would you comment that? They have no arms. They have no governance, really. Who's going to supply them? Lukashenko? It's not exactly clear what kind of game is that. If anything was promised to them by Kremlin leadership, all these supplies will be given or should be given then to them by those two. Pick the right expletive that he used. He used a ton against Shoigu and Gerasimov. So these two would have to supply him. So I don't know. These statements, they're probably targeting some of his fans, but I don't think he's targeting the actual officials. And that's right, Mark. We don't know what game he's playing. And his main message was that situation on the front is really awful, and their task is not to participate in that. And yeah, he did say, oh, by the way, Belarus, yeah, in the meantime, will aid Belarus a bit, and will return to our activities in Africa. And sounds like they tried a contract on the front with Ukraine, and they did not quite like the conditions. All right, so if he's given back his Africa fiefdom, who would understand, who can actually explain his status in Africa? Mark, what are you looking for? What status? You don't need status there. In Africa, you're being asked, what can you do, really? Well, other countries can do something about them too, right? Wagner is also a subject of being acted upon. Well, okay, but if he speaks about Africa, that means that he's allowed to be there. And frankly, any other status is not important. The main thing there is what you can do, what you cannot do. And Wagner proved that they can do a lot. They are rather successful in Africa. So you think the West will still just observe their return without any pushback and Prigozhin's activity? Mark, I wouldn't even use the word West in this case. All these hopes to the West, I prefer not to use these meanings currently. When they give aid, awesome. When they act and do something, wonderful. But I don't believe that they will be doing much in Africa. French gave them Central African Republic and Mali so much faster that I could even imagine. They didn't even contest. All right. 172,000 are with us, 65,000 likes. And we've been 31 and a half minutes on that stream. Our polling continues. 50,000 plus voted about the military escort of grain vessels in the Black Sea, and majority is saying no, but please continue voting. So today the topic of cassette munitions got a continuation. Pentagon made a statement that they already provided these munitions to Ukraine. Today, Karasin, he used to be a vice minister of foreign affairs. He is now in a Federation Council in Russia, which is kind of a quiet swimming pool for those who took some official positions earlier. So he came out with a statement basically saying, ouch, that hurts, please do not supply cassette munitions to Ukraine since they're prohibited by some international conventions and such, which is strange because Moscow was using cassette-type ammo since the beginning a lot of times, and now they're saying that they will mirror and they'll use the same type munitions as well. Then one can ask, what the heck were you using before? So, do you think this will have any outcome, given that your specific optimism today about the West? No, Mark, I'm not concerned in this case, given that Russia is running out of other options, and the West is also in a difficult situation. They're running out of stock of a certain caliber of ammo, artillery ammo. They don't have enough production capacity to catch up, and they're basically expanding nomenclature that allows them to cover the gaps that start showing up. So they're essentially compensating for the lack of a certain caliber, and yeah, there'll be cassette-type munitions, and we'll have a lot. So I think we should be okay with that. Okay, so you think this will not affect anything? No, it won't. Some countries make statements, though, internationally that this is not good. Yeah, right, because they signed that treaty about cassette ammo-type munitions, but neither Russia nor United States are participating in that convention, so nothing is limiting them. All right. Another news that came out recently, Ukraine, in the letter to the International Naval Organization, which is established by United Nations, is saying that they created a mechanism that would allow to guarantee a compensation of losses for the vessels that take risks and go to carry grain. And Kiev is saying that this mechanism will be applicable to any vessels that are going to or from the Ukrainian harbors. Do you think that matters? Our government has to give certain guarantees, reinsuring and appealing our allies to our allies and increasing air defense mechanisms and all. But this all is additional support activities, because for real, to guarantee military security and not just compensation in a monetary way for the lost vessel and dead crew, only the power that has enough military power in the Black Sea can guarantee that. The one that can resist Russian activity in the Black Sea, first of all, United States, France, and Britain, and of course Turkey. But since we cannot rely on any military aid in this regard, we of course can promise monetary compensation, but I sincerely doubt that there'll be plenty of ships going when the only promise is that they'll be remunerated if they're lost. So I'm skeptical here. You are skeptical, okay. Here is another piece of news. At least 10 international vessels are now under loading in Nikolaev and Odessa, and they have time till midnight to leave them. Otherwise, they will be considered by Russia as legitimate targets. Some registered in Hong Kong, Palau, Canary Islands, and Panama. And they're loading, right? And Odessa ports are already being shelled by Russian side, so that may slow down the loading. And these vessels may come out to ocean much later, after the end of the grain deal, so they're risking. Speaking of Wagner, by the way, I remembered an important thing. Let me return to the previous topic. This year, there were interesting trainings happening on the border with Belarus by the west and also in Belarus, and it's curious to see what tasks Wagner will be implementing during the training, during the exercise. Belarus is doing active military trainings, and we'll see exercises, and we'll see if they use Wagner for certain areas of the front. And Belarus, of course, will be bringing their troops towards the border. Every time, every training exercise, you bring gear and you bring military to the border. And I think Poland and other NATO allies will have to take note. And as we know, the world is full of wars, the world history is full of wars that shouldn't have started and had no reason to start and were illogical to start. So any training, any aggregation of military is always a concern. So we'll, by the way, see what Wagner will be playing. What role will they be playing in that exercise? What role are they given? So that might be a hint for us to see. And I think in general, they'll be trying to achieve different goals, to blackmail NATO, to trade for some position, and to trade for influence on the situation in Belarus. Perhaps Lukashenko can be controlled a bit more if Wagner is present there. So they're playing at large. Look, it's middle of summer. Russians are trying to advance near Kreminna and Kupinsk. They are doing large training with Belarus, including against NATO. Among the purposes, they're establishing a big naval blockade in Black Sea against Ukraine. So they're playing at large, at a large scale, which is very typical of Russian Federation. They always had grandeur plans, but they usually had faulty managers and executioners, but the initiative is usually pretty big. And the initiative is in their court now. They don't have full initiative, but they tried to bite quite a bit. And we'll see. It's curious to answer how our NATO allies and the international community at large will respond to that, because taking initiative is the key element of any geopolitical game if it is considered to be a game. And especially it's interesting to see some people who come out and say that there is a special plan the West has and they're trying to stifle Russian Federation. It's all according to the plan. I don't know. We'll see if the West has any plan. But for now, Russia made several successful moves that made the West think and is making them think and ponder on that. And since the West is not in an active position, Moscow is more active than the West in this conflict. And given that the West is usually slower and reactive to that, Kremlin definitely has a field to play. All right, we've been live for about 40 minutes. We got a ton of questions. As we promised, we'll ask some of them. Dmitry Mezentsev formulated some of them, and there are more people who are asking the same question. So the question is, what levels of pressure are from the West onto Zelensky if they will try to force him to sit and negotiate with Moscow? Be it counteroffensive or other factors they will use. Will Zelensky stand to that pressure, and will he refuse negotiations? Zelensky already proved that he can withstand different pressure. The question would be, what will he choose as a strategy this time? Is there an instrument to try to push him? Yeah, there is an ironclad instrument to influence Zelensky. Just stop supplying military gear. And they can play different reasons. They can say, look, Ukraine is not actively retaking their ground as rapidly as we thought, so you need to do something. And then they shut down the spigot with military supplies, and Zelensky will be in a difficult situation. And they can do that. That's definitely one of the possibilities. They can say that we don't have enough production capabilities, etc., etc. So we'll see if these will be used, but they can definitely act in that way. And it definitely will have effect on our position. But there is a public opinion too, right? There is Congress, there are Republicans who will use that situation if that develops, and they will say, look, they've given up. They're forgetting about their ally. Well, no, they basically will still probably consider supplying Ukraine, but the volume will be so low that we cannot talk about any counteroffensive. And then when the front will be stale for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, nobody moving anywhere, then technically we can imagine how that can, we're just projecting that the possible eventuality. Then they can, like President Pavel said, sit down, there's nothing happening, sit down and negotiate. So there are different eventualities that can play, yes. All right, we've been live today for almost 43 minutes. Let's conclude our polling. 66,800 voted. If military vessels of Turkey will convoy civil ships in the Black Sea, yes, 44%, no, 56%. So majority says no. And I would say, dear audience, don't have any illusions about that. Right, we're following what our audience is saying, and our audience is thinking the vessels will not be convoyed, will not be escorted. All right, 73,000 click the like button, 200 plus thousands are watching us. Please, once again, share that stream in your social media, send it to those who watch it from Russia or from other countries abroad. And we had a couple curious streams earlier this week, so if you missed those, take a look. And I hope you'll take time to review some of those materials. It is important for us. Thank you, everybody. Subscribe to Feygin Live to Olexiy Arestovych and to the Privateer Station. If you are listening or watching that in English and have not done that yet, see you on Saturday. Goodbye.